Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here and checking out the series. Hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with all the interviews that we put out every single week. New ones every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So it's a great way to keep up with your favorite artists, discover some new ones as well. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, WFPK.org, NPR, or of course right here on YouTube for the video versions. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today, I'll be talking with Yannis from the band Foals, who are back with a brand new record called Life Is Yours. The fun thing about this interview, and maybe the frustrating thing for Yannis and everything, is he was actually stuck in a taxi the whole time. So if you're just looking at the background, we get a little tour of London as he's driving around. But we do get to dive into the record, a record that he says finds the band in an experimental phase, working with multiple producers, leaning in to some dance sounds that they had done in the past, but really making it the focus of the entire record. So we're going to be hearing about the hows and the whys and the whats of all of that right there as we get into this. So please enjoy as we discuss Life Is Yours. It's Kyle Meredith with Yannis of Foals. My compliments first off. Life Is Yours. This is such a fun record. This is such a cool record, what you guys are doing these days. And it looks like the word that keeps coming up is experimentation. Experimentation is the name of the game. What does that mean in the context of this album?
I think we just wanted to kind of stretch our legs and try a different approach to songwriting. So I think in terms of like what was new, we allowed the synthesizers and the rhythms to kind of really take emphasis and drive a lot of the songwriting. Maybe where before we'd written as a more kind of traditional rock band. On this record, I think we just allowed the roles within the band to shift slightly, and then I think also the way in which we collaborated with the producers on the record meant that. There was quite a lot of external influence that came from them, and they definitely encouraged us. There was a few we worked with, and they all encouraged us to kind of be bold and brave with our approach to the songs. So yeah, I think it's quite a different record for us, and we're really excited about it. We feel really, really stoked that it's coming out, and excited to play it live. It feels good.
Yeah, the working with multiple producers, like as a fan, I sometimes get a little afraid when I hear that. Like, oh, I know that pop game, and it doesn't. Sometimes it ends up being a little bit bland. That's not the case with this one, but I guess, like, how do you avoid that? Because that seems tricky.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely had some potential pitfalls. I think. It could have. I wasn't really concerned about it being bland. I was concerned about it being just all over the joint, like not having any coherence to it and maybe having too many ideas. But I think we were quite selective about which producers worked on which track and which combos of producers. And also, if something was used that we didn't, or something was introduced to a song that we didn't like, we kind of, we retained artistic control at the end of the day, so we could subtract layers of things that we felt were over the top, perhaps, or unnecessary.
And you mentioned, dance music and letting the beats and the rhythm kind of take this one. That's the other fun thing that I find about this record, because dance music sometimes on the surface can seem shallow. Which makes it all the more fun when you can find the deeper story in it. As you're approaching, the lyrics and the themes of this, it's not the first time that you've done it by any means, but what's the marriage there to make sure that this just isn't, just a party record?
I don't think we'd ever make like just a party record, because I just don't write lyrics, that are just sort of superficial. So I think also for me, like, some of the greatest pieces of music are ones where the music itself is uplifting and melodic, but then the lyrics counteract that with a kind of melancholy and something bittersweet. So 2 a.m. is a perfect example of that, I think, where if you look at the musical aspect, or the instrumental rather, you could think, oh, it's a simple track. It's one of the simplest we've ever written. But But then once you add the lyrical counterpoint to that, it becomes a totally more interesting and more nuanced beast.
Yeah. 2 a.m. comes up in there. I was comparing, I think it with like 2001 a little bit as what you're getting to. I think you've said something about 2 a.m. being the repetitive cycles of destructive behavior. And do I get a little bit of that in 2001 as you're looking back at your youth as well?
Yeah, definitely. 2001 is like a song that is definitely set in a specific era when the band moved to Brighton. It's the first, like we moved as a group to Brighton, which is on the coast in the UK, and we rented a house together for the first time. And we were kind of all of a sudden, there was hedonism and temptation, and all set within this quite idyllic seaside. In many ways, quite an innocent place on the veneer of it, but it's also quite louche. It's quite like Brighton's a weird place, basically. It's fun. But yeah, the song is set there, and so that song, for me, I remember, I was feeling so frustrated and locked down that the only thing I could relate it to was feeling frustrated as a teenager, and like not being able to kind of go out and experience as much of life as I would like. And Brighton was really the time when it was like there was no holds barred. I'd had no parents in my vicinity, no responsibilities. We were young and in a band, and we went out and we lived it to the max. And the song is sort of it's tapping back into that place.
Yeah. Now, when you're writing something like that, and maybe I'm getting a little bit too heady here, but like, can you feel it? Like when you're trying to connect with that person, like, can you feel those moments when you're writing the song?
You can see it. Yeah, I can see it. Definitely. There's a couple of songs like that, like definitely with 2001, I can see exactly the visual representation of what I'm talking about, when I'm talking to you about it. And like it's an especially visual song, that one for me. The images of having like a blue tongue and from, candy cane and soda pops and stuff, like all of that is kind of things where those images are blazed on my imagination. Looking High on the album is another one that, again, is just like very evocative. It's set in actually a similar era, but in Oxford, in where we grew up, and it's to do with when we were younger, nightlife, and how that nightlife doesn't exist anymore. Those clubs we used to go to closed down. Our friends have all moved on, and life has taken us somewhere else. But yeah, I feel those moments, both in the writing, and then when we get to play live, often those songs will take us right back there every night on tour as well.
Yeah. My note on Looking High, I actually wrote the needing to recapture something in the past, and I don't know if you see it like that, but that's what I feel from that song. It's like you get in that moment every now and then where you find like need is the word I come back to, of needing to get back to something in there.
Yeah, I think what's weird, I know what you're saying. I agree. I mean, like with that song, it kind of starts off, musically, it's like quite major. It's in a kind of like, it's in an optimistic kind of place in certain ways. To me, it kind of reminds me of Prince or like some Minneapolis sort of funk stuff. And then what happens in the song is like the song actually becomes minor and becomes much more melancholic in the second half. And actually you realize that the nightlife and the people dancing on the dance floor, they now are ghosts. Those nightclubs and those evenings that you had and those friends you had, they've all moved into the past. They've become ghosts, and you miss that, and you're pining for it and longing for it. And that's the move in that song. It's like being somebody taking you back and showing you the amazing nights you had, and then reminding you that none of that exists anymore.
Which is a nice kick to the shins right there. It's like, hey, remember that? It's gone.
Yeah.
And everything leaves.
It's good. I think it's good.
It is good. I mean, we must move on from the party, right? Some version, metaphorically speaking. And compliments, of course, on the first single, Wake Me Up. I mean, this is such a strong single and a great song.
The song for me is more about trying to break out from really, it was trying to break out from basically just a depressive place, which was the one that I was writing from in lockdown, and wanting to try to transport myself and using the song as a transporting mechanism to try and move into a better place, and trying to wake me and my friends up and people that will hear the record out of a dystopian dream that was the last 18 months or 2 years in the pandemic, and to try and reemerge into a brighter future. And maybe that can, and I still hope for that. That's the power of music, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, there are powerful moments all over this album too. I mean, that heavy riff and flutter is so good. The sound, by the way that song builds and builds, and I wasn't paying attention to the track list. And I guess my mind has thought, and there it is, the finale. And then we get a song right after it. And I thought, oh man, the audacity to follow this song. That's a big moment right there. And then you gotta bring in that other thing. Like I'd love to hear about the sound too, because again, I think that's one of my favorite moments on the record.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I know, we love it. I mean, we just jammed that song out. There wasn't really a plan for the writing of that song. Jimmy had like the keyboard part, came up with the keyboard part, and we just kind of jammed it out. And for a long time, it was just a kind of instrumental, clubby track. We felt like it was inspired by Caribou and that type of slightly left field, I guess you'd say indie dance music, maybe, of which there's a lot in the UK. There's Fortet, there's some really great music that we were inspired by for that song. And then when we got to the studio, I just kind of, I'd done stuff with a group called Underworld before, wrote some music with them, and their singer Karl Hyde goes into a kind of free associative, repetitive, quite hypnotic way of singing. And I just kind of was like, that to me felt like the right course for this song. But yeah, you're right, it really builds. It's definitely one of the peaks of the album. And we normally probably on a different album would have put that song earlier in the sequencing, but actually we kind of wanted to sequence the record in a slightly different way than we've sequenced our other albums, because normally our albums kind of in the final tracks, the last couple of tracks, often they slope off, they kind of quietly tail off towards the end. But this time we put that there as the climactic moment, penultimate, but it didn't ever feel like the closer. That was the thing. And as you're saying, so then we have got Wild Green, which to us feels like the perfect closer afterwards. But yeah, we're really happy with the way those songs turned out.
Yeah, ends up being a really powerful moment. You mentioned Karl Hyde and Underworld. Did I read somewhere that there's an album still to come on that?
I've made some tracks with him, like maybe there's maybe 5 or 6. They're all in different states of finishing. I'd love to hopefully finish them at some point with him. There's one called The Gambler that was used on the Jinx. I think it's called The Jinx, which is about Robert Durst, who was a wealthy property. Anyway, you can hear that's one of the only ones that's actually released. It's called The Gambler, and that's me and Karl Hyde, and it's a banger.
Yeah, I love that marriage right there. The two of you all and what's going on. And I know that there's lots happening this year. The tour is coming up. You guys are going to do Glastonbury. I did see it looked like that you're playing opposite Billie Eilish at the time. So that's it's I don't know what you can do from the stage on that point. I mean, slingshotting anything over.
No, dude, that to be honest, that's a good clash for us. That isn't a problem. I love Billie Eilish, and that she's going to be awesome. But like, if you're headlining one of the stages at Glastonbury, you're clashing with somebody good. And at least it's definitely. I think there's enough differences between us and Billie that I don't think there's going to be much of an issue there.
Right.
Like, I think the Glastonbury's a big old festival. There's enough people to go around, so it's going to be cool.
Yeah. Well, Yannis, congrats on all this, man, on all the success. Life is Yours is such a strong album. I've had so much fun listening to it, and I so appreciate you taking the time to talk about it today.
Thanks so much, man. I'm sorry about the signal and the traffic chaos here in London. The city's needs to sort itself out.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed the background tour as we've been talking. That's,
I mean, we crossed the Thames. We crossed the Thames, so we crossed the river. I'm sorry. It's been chaos here.
Yeah, there's a part of me that got to cross it today as well. I didn't expect that. So thanks. It's I appreciate the talk, man. Take care, and I can't wait to see this show live.
All right, thanks so much, Carl. Appreciate it.
My thanks to Yannis. Foals, the new record. It's called Life is Yours. Thanks to you as well for checking out the episode. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. The subscribe button. 3 new interviews every single week. New ones every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can do it here on YouTube. You can, of course, grab it in podcast land as well. And then after that, head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, mostly Twitter, but also Instagram, Facebook, all three of them, at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.